Hi. All right. Here we are.
Hello, hello.
All right. Ben and Jason, thanks for joining us here to talk about your new movie, Homestead, which is a post-apocalyptic thriller about an attack on the USA. So tell me, where did the thought come from when the script, was being adapted from the book?
You go ahead, Jason.
So we talked to Angel Studios, and they're fans of the novel series Black Autumn, written by myself and Jeff Kirkham. He's a former Green Beret, and we took a look at that and decided what how we would tackle it. And we took the first book in the series of 11, Black Autumn, and expanded it into somewhere between 8 and 10 episodes of a television show. But before we did that, we kind of pressed pause and wrote a film to kick the whole thing off, to show this black swan series of events that drops the United States into total chaos. So the idea being, a black swan isn't one thing. It isn't like a nuclear attack alone or a cyber attack or a disease. It's a combination of unexpected events that pile onto each other, much like World War One began, much like the Great Depression. These are unanticipated events that sort of stack on top of each other. In our case, it's all started with sort of an almost accidental terrorist attack on Los Angeles, that's nuclear, that just sets kind of the whole world on fire. The Russians pile on, the Iranians pile on, everybody just kind of attacks America while they're on the ropes without even sending any troops, but does everything they can to weaken America all at once. So that's the basis. It's a black swan. It kind of reminded me of like Leave the World Behind on Netflix, where it's no one's quite sure what happened to the United States because the communication fell so fast. And so that puts us now in the middle of the homestead, a preparedness, rich man's preparedness sort of fantasy up in the mountains, and all of the mayhem that begins right there.
Right. And that is a terrifying thought of, something that could just all of a sudden, one day we're doing our normal stuff, and the next day, we have no power, things are on fire, and that's scary.
Sure. And how do you prepare for that? I mean, we were talking about preparedness. What if nobody gets the Armageddon they planned on? What if what if, call it the army guy, the pastor, the gardener, what if nobody got the apocalypse they planned on? Then what happens? And that's kind of where we begin, is blowing up all of the post-apocalyptic tropes that we've seen a million times. Like, well, what if none of this goes down like you think? How prepared are you really to be resilient and flexible? And how prepared are you really to like lean into the answers to questions you've never even thought you'd end up having to ask in the middle of apocalypse?
Yeah, it's scary, scary thought, especially with like, all of the natural disasters that have been going on lately, which have kind of given us like a glimpse into that because you have no power, your house is damaged, you've only got the food that's in your house. You don't have, you can't go to the store, and you're just stuck there. And it's a horrible feeling because I experienced it personally when Helene hit Georgia. And it's just even that, but the desperation that comes from that is just terrifying.
And it's
Yeah,
terrible.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I was
You're
just going to say, I mean, literally, I lived exactly what you're talking about the last few days, and we just got power back late last night. But there's wildfires about 10 minutes from us. It's about 20,000 acres at the moment, and power went out. All our friends are texting us, and we have all these brand partners from this film, and so we've got Lion Energy as a battery backup, and we're charging our phones and using the lights and all the different things. And so many friends were like, we have nothing, you know, does this generator work? And, you know, we thought it'd just be maybe 4 to 8 hours of no power, and it turned into 2 days. And, you know, you start thinking about like, oh my gosh, what if this escalated into more, you know, what would happen? And I think the film and the show really shows that in full force, you know, that it doesn't take long for collapse to happen, you know, or whether it's a natural disaster or something else, you know. And I'm reading the headlines now, literally 10 minutes away, and you know, tons of people have lost their homes. Like literally, I remember seeing a fire. It was at 250 acres. I'm like, oh, there's a fire. And fast forward 4 hours, it had destroyed all these homes completely. So yeah, very realistic, you know, things that could happen as far as, you know, a collapse of some type.
Right. Okay. You mentioned, we talked about the movie. You also mentioned a show. Could you kind of tell us more details about that?
The television show picks up right where the movie leaves off. So you can watch the film in theaters December 20th. It opens, and then go straight home and stream the beginning of the television show. We filmed that. We just wrapped on filming of the first the two episodes that follow the television show, or pardon, that follow the feature film. And and then behind the feature film and the television show, we have a Homestead Family Survival, it's called. It's on the Angel Studios app, same as the television show. That is a live and scripted show about everything we learned in the 10 years leading up to the movie and the television show. So how we learned preparedness and survival, because everything you see in the show, in the feature film and in the television show, we've lived. Just like Ben's talking about, he's using Lion Energy products to keep his lights on the last couple of days. We've been using our brand partners and the methods as well as the products that you see in the film in order to be prepared and to survive a natural disaster or a complete collapse. All those methods have been tested on the farm where we filmed the homestead.
Well, that definitely could come in handy. I'm gonna have to check that out. And it's not just about, the disaster in the film. It's about the people and the relationships they have. And, I find it really interesting the difference between the rich guy and his wife. Like it's our food. We got to save it. We got to protect ourselves. And she's, I want to help people. And I love to see that interaction.
Because we think in terms of the tropes we've seen in every single post-apocalyptic television show, movie, we've seen the tropes of what's mine is mine. It's kill or be killed. But really, I mean, especially if you don't know if society's coming back, are you really just going to start shooting people who show up at your doorstep looking for help? And that's what we've been led to believe by watching post-apocalyptic stories, that it'll just be mayhem and carnage. But what can you do to help? Can you prepare to share in addition? And so right off the bat, this rich preparedness guy who has kind of a preparedness paradise almost immediately begins to find that none of his assumptions work. Right from the beginning, he's hired like a Green Beret ex Special Forces guy to come in and provide security. And immediately, since it looks like the world is kind of ending, he can't pay this guy. And what would he do with money anyway? So it's right off the bat, like, who's in charge? Is it the security guy he hired, or is he still in charge? And why? Why wouldn't the others just take his homestead from him? And then the big question is, people start to pile up at his gate because they know he has a preparedness community. And his wife is saying, well, why don't we share? And he's like, look at the math. We don't have enough. We have enough food maybe for the people who are inside the gate, not an extra 100 people outside the gate. And she's a person of faith, and it begins to immediately become a conflict in her own faith. Their children are still out there in the world. 2 of their children are still wandering. They don't know where they are. They can't communicate with them. She's like counting on strangers to take care of her own children, but then they're telling the people outside their gate to pound sand. How do you rectify, expecting strangers to serve your children and help them survive if you're not willing to let the people at your own gate survive? So all of these conflicts, everybody's assumptions about how prepared they are and how they're going to do this go right out the window. We just blow up the typical post-apocalyptic story, like almost right from the very beginning.
Right. You did, and what I enjoyed the film, and I loved the contrasting characters, and between the hardened people that we've got to survive, and the teenagers kind of being teenagers.
They're not going to
So
stop
I
being
mean,
teenagers. Yeah.
it's a great it's a great combination, and just the thought that it triggers about what would you do, is enough to keep you up at night thinking, how would I survive?
Yeah. And I think we tried to showcase every type of person that we could in the show, right? Like, I think everybody that watches it will go, wow, I'm very much that person. And I would do everything that they did. When faced with it, maybe I would actually steal a car to protect my family and to get to the next location. And so you can see that broad range of different types of characters throughout the film.
Right. And, I definitely, see myself, 'cause when the disaster hit, I was the one hooking up coffee maker to the generator just so all the women in the street could have, their coffee. So, I mean, I get that. And it's, it not only raises about survival, it raises a lot of questions about society, and how would it go? And would everybody just lose their minds, which would probably happen. But, what would you do to protect your people? And that's intense.
Yeah. And who are your people? Like at the end of the day, would you even want to do this alone? And who are the most useful? Because we think like in the survival world that, people who grow food or raise animals are the most important. But what if they're horrible to get along with? Or people who know how to run a gun and use a firearm to defend themselves? But what if they're also like really tough to get along with? Is it worth it? Are they going to be more trouble than I mean, what kind of people survive these kind of events? And as we look back in history at Sarajevo or Bosnia, if you look at Venezuela, now Argentina, or maybe it's the reverse, Argentina and now Venezuela, you look at places where society has collapsed. Who survived? It's not who we think. It's rather people like Jenna Ross in the movie who start asking questions about community building. The communities survive, lone wolves die. And we address, I mean, the assumption in the most of the post-apocalyptic movies, other than maybe like Stephen King, The Stand, where in The Stand you see communities come together around almost supernatural ethos. Those are strong communities, as opposed to people who just lone wolf it, who are pretty much goners. But like in most survival films we see, it's boiled down to Mad Max and who's the toughest guy with the best dog.
No, that definitely wouldn't be me, because my dog she's sweet, but she ain't very bright.
Might be the best dog to have, just a barker.
All right, Ben, what would you do if you were in this situation that's in the movie?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd be at Jason's doorstep. I'd be on the other side of the gate saying, "You need to let me in so I can make movies. I'm a filmmaker. Let me in." No, I mean it's interesting. My wife and I, again, we've come across certain situations where we're like, "Oh my gosh, what are we going to do in this situation?" I think that it's interesting exactly what you did when you were like, something happened with the hurricane and you're like, I was plugging a coffee maker in and wanting to make coffee for everybody, right? Like everyone's going to respond differently. I think we've seen this in our own lives. We saw it during COVID as well, which is, these small pockets of community coming together is much, much more powerful than you just trying to, get into a hole and hide from everybody and protect your own. That's fine for a minute, but then you quickly realize that you need others. And so, even like one of the taglines of our Homestead marketplace is, better prepared together. And so, that's just a theme that we keep seeing. And I think it's going to resonate with people as they're, looking at the State of the Union, where we're at today as a country, where we're at in the world, all the different things going on, rather than like building a bunker and kind of putting the tinfoil hat on and all the conspiracy theories. Is like, hey, you know what? The best thing you could do to prepare is actually go talk to your neighbor and say, hey, what are you, like, if something happened, what do you have prepared and what do I have prepared? And maybe we could do something as a neighborhood together. And I think that, again, is a theme that we're trying to emphasize and show there's a different way that we can look at this. And, I think one of the things that we've talked about a lot with the project is this idea that, maybe a reset isn't such a bad thing. And maybe God, if you believe in God, could actually use a reset to better society. Wherever you're at politically, fine. It looks like there might be some resets happening, in the health industry and pharma and food and things like that. And man, I was excited to hear about some of those things, because I'm like, oh, how long has there just been this system that's been building that, it's bureaucracy and all these different things. And like, maybe we just need to come back to the earth and go back to family and friends and like, making, growing tomatoes and making sourdough bread, et cetera, et cetera. There's something about that I think historically, when you look at all of humanity, that it's really healthy for us to just come back to the basics, come back to family, come back to getting your hands dirty in the earth,
Yeah,
And the horror of the horror of a thriller, of a story that could actually happen is a little different. When you take away the zombies and now put us in the middle of a breakdown that we can, I think all of us imagine at this point. We've seen so much division in the US and we have so many enemies surrounding us. This could actually happen. So it's a horror story that could actually happen. And then for none of our presuppositions to play out, the terror of these families trying to survive in the middle of a world in collapse, it has this like added, it has this added level of, this could be next year. This isn't, we've seen COVID and we've seen the potential of disease. Kelly and I were just talking before you got on, Ben, about prion disease, about mad cow or chronic wasting, which is this weird disease that we've had now for a while that hasn't crossed over to humans from deer. Deer have it all over the United States. Mad cow happened and killed a bunch of people in England. And it's this very strange disease. It's not a virus. It's not a bacteria. It's this other weird disease. And if we experience a disease or combining with social strife and then all of our assumptions get blown up, the only safety is, like you were saying, Ben, with each other. But the terror of navigating that can only really be mitigated by getting together in a community and putting all of our heads together and all of our hearts together and deciding how to tackle these horrors. And it wouldn't be easy. You lose people, and you would lose children. And we see that in the movie, like the actual possible horror of the worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we've seen it so many times. You watch a Marvel movie and you're like, there's an element of suspense and thriller nature to it, right? But it's like, they're using like laser guns and stuff, right? So there's like this unrealistic aspect to that. But then, I just had another actor that screened the film the last couple of days. She keeps texting my wife and I. She's like, I'm in all these meetings all day. I can't stop thinking about Homestead. I can't stop thinking about what I would do. And then like an hour later, she's like, asking questions about bug out bags and what can I do? This thing. So it's very clearly like hits at the heart of things, though, because it's realistic.
Right. And like you mentioned bug out bags, which I happen to have one. Will that be covered in the the reality show.
Yeah,
Yes,
100%.
absolutely.
We look at all forms, like our favorite bug out bags, do like different bug out scenarios. And then of course we're showing what happens if you stay at your house, what happens if you leave, because there's horrible dangers either way. And then what would you need and how long would you get by? And it really depends on the season. The Homestead show happens at the worst possible moment, which is essentially October, where the harvest is in. There's no more growing food this year. You're going straight into the doldrums of winter, where it's very, very cold in most places in the United States. There's no way to grow any food for a long time. It takes place, because it also depends. If it happens at the beginning of summer, yeah, maybe it's a bit of a camping trip for a while. But if it happens at the cusp of winter, then what?
Exactly. It's just terrifying. It's a terrifying thought altogether. It really is. And, I love that you're exploring this because there is so much going on in the world that people need to be prepared for just in case. And hopefully it's just in case. But, I mean, they need prepared. And with the movie and the two series, you know, people can learn. They can learn how to survive and take care of themselves and their family. And that's really important right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Jason, I think taught me this, but there's something scientific about when we're watching a television show or a film that we're actually looking at it, trying to learn, trying to figure out like, what would I do? What should I do in this scenario? And you're constantly kind of like gaining those survival, that survival knowledge, which is such a fascinating thing. And we all do it. We're like, okay, how would I do it? Okay, they did it like this. I'm taking notes, trying to figure out what I would do in that specific scenario. It's really a scientific thing, actually.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
talking earlier about how in your town and in your family you guys hunt. How would you? We started asking questions about how would I provide for ourselves, and the big secret, when you get right down to it, is it's a better way to live anyway. If to have a garden, to have a few chickens, to hunt deer in the fall, and to learn with your children, like doesn't require apocalypse to start getting our hands in the soil and learning how to grow apples and raise chickens. You can do that right now, and it's a wonderful way to live. It's how humanity lived in community for thousands of generations. And yes, we bounced into this postmodern world where we have all this convenience, but wouldn't we be happier if we added back a little simple living, community living? That's kind of one of the questions that's kind of underneath the story. The tagline of the film is the end of the world is just the beginning. And we're looking at like, what can we learn from the end of the world without having to actually experience it? What could we learn? What would we walk away from the end of the world saying, we should have just done this before? We could have avoided the end of the world if we'd just gotten our hands in the soil and returned to simpler truths as community, God, to putting our heads together, cooperating better instead of being so isolated through modern convenience.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
One of the things to even take it further is we don't just talk about these themes or show this is how you survive. We've actually built out a marketplace called homesteadgear.com, and you can actually buy the products that you would need to survive, right? So that was something my wife, again, was asking the last couple of days. She's like, what do you do to get started? And I was like, funny that you asked that. Like, here's like, you can go to this website and you can check out, like, these are the 7 things you need to be prepared. More than 97% of Americans are. And so we really want to equip people, educate people on things, and equip people and say, hey, this is something you could do today to start homesteading or to start being prepared.
Yeah, you can actually win. You can actually win a totally kitted out homestead when you pre-buy tickets to the show, which is kind of exciting. It's like $300,000 worth of homestead startup gear that you can win when you buy tickets from the pre-sale.
That's awesome. I mean, because I grow stuff. I'm a plant person, but at the same time, I got my first rifle when I was 8 years old. So I know what it's like to live off land, and we do try to around here. You can't get better vegetables, if from the grocery store you can grow them. So that stuff is really important, just for everyday life. Plus, you think about less chemicals, less stuff being sprayed on your food. You hunt a deer, it's not pumped full of all these weird, growth hormones and stuff. I mean, it's
Hmm.
healthier. It's just a healthier
Hmm.
option. And knowing how to survive, on top of that, it's just a good idea.
Hmm.
And I love that the movie it covers all this, but at the same time, it gives us that that thriller aspect of you don't know what's going to happen. Are the family members okay? Who's coming for them? And it's so your heart's pounding and you're waiting just to see who gets shot or who doesn't make it, and
And
that
who's gonna come for all your preparations? Like who knows and who's coming? And it might even be the government. And as you know, so it could be neighbors, it could be your city, it could be the SWAT team, it could be anybody coming for. And then what is FEMA going to show up? So the television show and the movie are just one totally unexpected wallop, and then you're seeing decisions be made by like these experts like Jeff Erickson, one of the main character of the story, where he's this special forces expert, and every time he tries to apply special forces strategy, tactics, viciousness, violence of action to this scenario, it turns around and just blows up in their face and causes so much more risk for his family. So like the theme being nobody gets the apocalypse they wanted. What if every single thing went wrong? What if all of your plans blew up in your face? What if it wasn't the apocalypse you thought it was going to be? What if it was just a horrific mess of unexpected, unanticipated outcomes? Because that's what black swan events are. That's how World War I got started. That's how the Great Depression kicked off. That's how the collapse of 2007, 2008 happened in the financial markets. That's even COVID, where we were like, what? I can't even, there's no eggs at the store? I never thought, all the toilet paper is gone? Who ever imagined that?
yeah, yeah. And if you had chickens, you wouldn't have to really worry about eggs. So there's that.
That's true. That's true.
So trust, I mean, my mom has plenty of them. She's got like 40 chickens, but she's got plenty to go around. But it really is an important thought because you never know when there's going to be political upheaval or a natural disaster, or some other country deciding that they've you know want what we've got or have had enough. And stories like these, are just it's just important to show people, you know, that there's another way, and then support it to think about things, to ask yourself those questions. So it's
Hmm.
good. Good.
I'm excited for you to watch the series because we keep asking all of those questions and continue to push the kind of the tension and the even the grittiness of it. I think as the stories progress and as the season progresses, it's even more action thriller than the film was. So I'm excited for you to check that out once it launches.
I'm definitely going to check it out because now, I got to find out what happened. I mean, I got to find out how it all, turns out. And, that's a great thing. And that's the great thing about shows that are realistic. They do capture your attention and you want to see, you've
Hmm.
got to see how they unfold. And I would definitely, like to learn more about, just survival in general.
Hmm. Well, go check out homesteadgear.com and you can sign up and get a lot of information about how to do that better.
I definitely will. I definitely will. And so when do you think we will see the series premiere that both follows the movie and the reality type series that will follow that?
So the reality show is actually out now. You can check it out on Angel Studios app. I think there's 3 or 4 episodes that have been launched. It's called Homestead Family Survival. And then the series actually launches. We'll have 2 episodes that launch right when the film comes out in theaters. So you go to the theaters, you see it on the big screen. It's this crazy experience. You can scan this QR code and literally right there in the theater, you can start watching the next episode and keep the story going. So it's a pretty interesting business model. If it works, I think we'll see a lot more of like kind of that blending of going to the theater for a theatrical experience, going home and watching it in the streaming kind of in your house theater as well. So,
And this is kind of the first time that that's been presented that way, is it not?
There's been projects that have done a little bit. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, like I think of Guy Ritchie, The Gentleman, or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where a movie does really well, and then it's followed by a television show. This is first time I can think of that a theatrical experience poured straight into a streaming experience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fantastic, and everybody loves streaming, so it's you get the best of both worlds, of all the worlds actually, because there's 3 different experiences. And
Mm-hmm.
that's great. And I love the fact that y'all are out here, presenting people with these experiences and hoping, that they will think things through. And it's to see somebody survive would be, a great thing. So, but I thank y'all so much for talking with me.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, good to meet you. Thank you.
You too. And I will include links to everything.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll get those sent over to you. And again, like Jason said, if you pre-order tickets for the movie, you get entered to win. It's a $300,000 Homestead kind of giveaway package. It's everything you need to survive the apocalypse, plus a flamethrower because that felt really necessary.
Wait. You can win a flamethrower.
That's correct. Yes. It's pretty awesome.
And an ATV built out by Sparks Motors and all sorts of amazing stuff. It's an incredible giveaway.
It's cool. Unfortunately, I can't win, but you could win actually, Kelly. So, and all of your readers and listeners could win as well. So yeah, check it out. Pre-order tickets. It's coming out in theaters December 20th.
Right.